little background on how I know anything about this. It's all because of Melissa. In fact, everything is because of Melissa. I mean, I was looking I was working on myself and doing shadow work before Melissa. But once Melissa came around, then that's the whole thing just turned into, that's when the real alchemy started. So Melissa is the patron saint of all of this. None of this could have come out without her. None of my current work could have come out without her. The changes that have happened in my own internal state, which have been quite a lot, could not have happened without her. I could not have developed to the degree I have without her. And so everything goes back to her. And this is how I learned what it is to have an alchemical relationship. What is it to have a relationship with another person, an intimate relationship with another person who is as dedicated as you are to developing internally, to doing the shadow work, to doing the parts work, to applying your psychospiritual systems, in our case, a lot of Jungian psychology and other systems, applying that and going back and forth with the other person, having conflicts with the other person and having to work through those conflicts and having to repair, and not just repair, but mature and evolve through conflicts. And everything that comes when you go really deep and get really intimate with another person, it is an absolutely numinous environment. Absolutely. When you engage like this with somebody else, it turns on the juices. It turns everything on. And our relationship was incredibly psychoactive 24/7. Very psychoactive 24/7. A lot of downloading, a lot of mysticism, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of creativity, massive amounts of creativity. I've always been a very creative person, and Melissa was always. We were both very creative, always. But then together, it was just off the hook. So, just a phenomenal thing. 12 years it lasted. 12 years, and then Melissa had to take off. She had to get off the planet for reasons we don't fully know yet. But, and then, I didn't even mention this today, but I've mentioned it many other times, the kind of grieving that I've had to go through, and pulling my psyche up off the floor and pulling it back into myself after losing her. It's just been, oh man, tremendously difficult, but also very enlightening and very, very educational too at the same time. So it all goes back to Melissa. All right, now to do this in our understanding, because everything I'm going to talk to you about is everything that Melissa would agree with, or that she always said herself. First of all, it starts with 100% transparency. So you cannot hide anything from the other person. That just has to be number one rule. There's no hiding. If you get together with somebody and you're exploring the relationship and all of that, you don't have to dump everything that you know about yourself or dump all of your judgments of the other person right on them. You don't have to do that. You don't want to do that. But as time goes on and trust is developed, because great trust will be developed when you work this way. As trust is developed, then you open up more and more and more. And so everything that you're aware of, that's in your shadow, that you're working on, and that you need help with, and that you know is an issue for yourself, that goes on the table. Your partner finds out about all that stuff. Your partner finds out about all your dreams and fantasies and all the things that you've wanted to do, and your beliefs about yourself and what you might be capable of doing. In other words, all your gold. You tell them about all your gold and your fantasies, and then you tell them about your shadow and your wounds and your traumatic circumstances and your family life and how you diagnose or analyze your parents and the rest of your family. And all this stuff, just like you're with your therapist, all this comes up and it all goes on the table. So your partner knows a lot about you. Your partner knows about your family, knows about your upbringing. And then your partner, if they're serious about this too, they're taking all this in. They're cataloging all this stuff. A lot of couples have relationships where they don't even really know that much about their partner's background or their most formative experiences. They know a couple things, but not that much. They're either not sharing it or they don't have the interest enough to remember it. But in this kind of a relationship, when somebody tells you something about themselves, either on the light side or the shadow side, that is important, you log that. That becomes an important piece, that's an important scroll in their library. And you need to remember all that. So you want to remember all their important stuff, and they need to do it for you. So you really learn what's in that person's background and everything. And when you do that, and when you really listen to their stories, and you really listen to their stories, and while you're listening, you're imagining and you're asking questions and you're filling it in with your own imagery. And so then this memory of theirs becomes part of your library. And that's an important thing to do for understanding them and for generating deeper intimacy. Their stories become partly yours. And so it's just this, you're always sharing and absorbing the other person's stuff. And then you're also questioning them, because a lot of times when people pull stuff out, it comes up, always actually, with judgments. Self-critic type stuff, or leftover grief or guilt or shame or fear. Shadow stuff comes up with these experiences. And so an analysis has to take place. Doesn't have to take place right then and there, but at some point it's like, okay, you're thinking to yourself as these stories are coming up, okay, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean for her? What does this mean for him? What is this all about, right? So you're being their therapist in a way. You're analyzing it. They're analyst. So 100% transparency and the practice of sharing deeply all of your older material. The golden rule is present, and the highest ethics are maintained. Okay, so I'm reading from my notes. When we're like, if you, for example, if you start studying the Jungian system and you start getting a feel for what this whole thing is and how this works and what we do, and you start, getting into doing this alchemy, this doesn't replace our civilization's ethics, our morals. This does replace some of the religious ritual and beliefs. We have our own versions of those. But the basic ethics, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, remove the log out of your own eye before you try to take the speck out of your brother's eye, these kinds of things. We retain all of that. We retain all of the clean ethics and everything, but we go further than what, let's say, the Christians did, or the Jews or the Muslims. We're going further than that because we're doing the shadow work. Instead of demonizing other people and splitting the world into the faithful and the heretics, we are processing our own shadows so we don't have to dump them on other people. We don't need scapegoats and enemies. So we're actually going further than what the Christians and other religions in the West are doing. But we are retaining everything that we have all inherited, that we were all taught is what is the right thing to do. And all the way down to, I can take it out of the relationship container for a second and just say it goes all the way out into everything that we're doing, into all relationships. All relationships. The relationship you have, why do you stop at the stop sign in your car, with your car? Because you're in relationship with the community, right? And so we're constantly being aware of our relationship to the community, but back to the personal alchemical relationship, we're retaining all of the golden rule and all of those ethics in our alchemical relationships. So that means, like what my next note says here, is no lying or covering up or hiding anything, right? Because that's in our ethics. We lie about nothing. We never lie. We never lie, ever. We don't necessarily have to, like I said before, constantly say everything that's on our mind at all the time, but we're never lying to our partner. If there's ever an issue, it's like, okay, I think we need to talk about this. And it goes into a conversation about whatever it is. We're never lying about anything. And if there's anything shadowy that's coming up for us, a lot of people go into relationships and they don't, people don't even know that they have some kind of an addiction or some kind of chronic behavioral issue or whatever that they're not telling the other person about. We can't do that. We don't do that. So there's no lying, there's no hiding, there's no covering up of anything. Back to 100% transparency. It's just another way to say that. 100% responsibility. This is Melissa's term. We take 100% responsibility for everything that happens to you and through you. 100%. This is the goal. We're not capable of taking 100% responsibility for everything that happens to us at first. At first, we're not capable of that. We're still thinking that the outside world is doing something to us. That the outside world is, that we're suffering from bad luck, or that other people are bad or insensitive or whatever it is. And so we're subject to the outside world, and we just can't help what happens to us from the outside world. In this system, we're not doing that. When things happen to us from the outside world, we recognize that is some kind of a reflection. It is some kind of a reaction to things that are going on inside of us that we haven't figured out yet. We haven't made conscious yet. And that the outside event is actually a way to make us conscious of what's going on inside if we have the alchemical tool, as above, so below. So we use as above, so below, and then we can see as within, so as without, so within. And we analyze external events as though we are analyzing dream material and synchronicities. and all external events. And so we're struggling with it. We struggle with taking responsibility for everything that happens to us externally that we have no ability to control. We struggle with that, but we try, right? And that's the direction we're moving towards. So this one now, the second part of that, everything that happens to you and through you, it's easier to take responsibility for everything that happens through you, even though the average person does not do that. The average person does not take responsibility for what happens through them. That's your own behavior, that's your own attitudes, your own thoughts and feelings, everything that's happening with your body, everything that comes through you, everything you say, everything you do, all your behavior, that you're definitely taking 100% responsibility for, even if you can't do it, even if you have to take an accounting of it after, because we're not fully conscious and we are not in full control of the internal systems of our complexes. And so when those get moving, then we take responsibility for them afterwards. And then as we get better at this, we're able to get ahead of the behavior of our complexes, and we're able to make different choices. But that's an ongoing process. So we take 100% responsibility for everything that happens to us and through us as a standard, even though we're not living up to it 100% because we're not capable of it. But we have that as the standard, and so we move in that direction. We don't beat ourselves up over it, but we apply. We do the work. We do the work. And so we get closer and closer to that ideal. Listening and mirroring the other, I was talking about that. But mirroring is a little different than just listening. Mirroring is where you are aware of the fact that the other person's greatness is not fully realized. They have not fully realized their greatness, and you have not fully realized yours. And so as you deepen your relationship and your intimacy with this person, and you discover more and more about them, and you know more and more about their past and what their dreams are and what their talents are, and you start looking at them with those eyes, then you start seeing all the areas where they're a genius, because everybody is a genius in certain areas. Or let's say, even if that genius is not fully developed, there is a certain natural skill or talent, abilities, multiple abilities that everyone has. And some of them they know about and they're putting into their life, right? And the more healthy they are in this way, the more access they have to their genius, and their genius is moving into their life, and it's working out for them. That's the ideal. But everybody, even people who are successful in their, in manifesting their genius, they have other parts of their genius that are still back there. So we all have unclaimed gold, golden shadow, we call it. So you're looking for that in the other person. Where's their golden shadow? Where is, just like how you're doing with children. Obviously, this is where it all starts. It starts with children. It starts with parents that are looking for that genius in the child and then pulling it out and mirroring it back and saying, look how amazing you are in that way. Right? That's what builds self-esteem. And when we don't get all of the mirroring that we need, because the parents are in denial about it to some degree, they might see certain aspects of our gold and they may reflect that back to us, but there's other parts of us that are in the family shadow that they can't see or don't want to see, and so they don't mirror that back, right? So hold on, I'm getting a message on my I don't know what that means. That's weird. It's an interesting message I never saw. So what we're doing, we're continuing that process that may not have been done so well by the parents, and so we're mirroring our partner's genius, and we're keeping an eye out for wherever that is, and then we're saying, you're really good at that, or I think you could that you could take that to the next level, whatever that is. Or if they're a writer, hey, why don't you read me your latest, read me a chapter of your next book that you're working on. I'd like to hear that. Or, whatever it is, they're writing a song or whatever. How are you doing on that song? Let me hear where you're at with that, Or somebody, you have a conversation with, you go out and people are talking and stuff like that and having a conversation. And, after the party or whatever, you say, I was listening to you talking to, Cynthia or whatever. I really think you did a good job listening to her and helping her work through that issue, And so you're seeing that person, your partner's talents. You're not just taking it for granted that they have talents or leaving it up to other people to mirror them. So you're mirroring those people. You're mirroring your partner, and it's an active thing that you're looking for things to mirror in them. So now there's the reverse of that. Let's talk about the reverse of that. And let me actually make a note to myself about the mirroring and the reverse, which is when you find things about the other person that are shadowy, or where they're having issues, or that are in some way you think they're ugly, you think those issues they have, those traits they have are ugly or dysfunctional. And the first thing is you have to remember I'm writing notes to myself right now. You have to remember that when you judge another person, you're mixing up your own projections with your analysis. So you're looking at this other person's traits, their behavior, and you're thinking, okay, that's bad. I should bring that up to them. And but you have to remember that this is very important, that when your analysis is tainted with your projections, it's tainted with your mother complex, with your father complex, and other complexes. It's tainted with all of that. So when you point that thing out to them, first of all, when you criticize something about that other person, about your partner, you may be criticizing them in a way that your own father or mother did. That's very likely that that's what you're doing, and you're just continuing on the pattern. And so there's a projection going on. There's an old pattern going on that's in there. And so and that will trigger them. And then you're going to have a conflict. And then you're going to have to pull that apart, and you're going to have to recognize how you were partially projecting. You were partially true. You're right. You were partially right. This is how projection works. You may have found something that is a defect in the other person. Yes, you may have. But your way of dealing with it and your particular analysis of it is all tainted. So you have to figure out how to, so this is where it takes real maturity, and this is where you can't avoid conflict. If you feel compelled to criticize somebody else about something, the first thing to do is just put it away for a little while. Put it away for a little while and see if how your moods and your attitude about it change. If you're obsessed about that thing and you can't wait to talk to them about that thing and there's an obsession going on, then you know there's a projection. There's a projection. There's a shadow component of you involved. So that is and you can tell the other person, listen, this is a good thing to do. You can say, listen, I want to tell you about how I was going to criticize you about something, but I noticed that I was getting obsessive about it and I was micro-focusing on it. And now I realize I've blown it all out of proportion and I can't be honest about what this analysis is. And then they're going to say, well, what was it? And then you're going to say, well, when I tell you what it is, if it makes you feel, if it disrupts you, we're going to have to work through this. And they're going to say, yeah, I know. And you're say, okay, well, this is what it was. This is what I was seeing in you. And then you may get some kind of reactivity out of them. They may say, well, you do the same thing in this way and blah, blah, blah. And you have to say, well, yeah, you're right, I do. And then you're going to have to pull it apart with that person. And they're going to have to say, well, you're both going to have to say how much of this criticism is accurate, how much can you both agree on, and how much of it is projection, and where does it come from, and does it come from my parents, and where is it coming from, and where is the source of this in both of us? Where is the dysfunctional trait in one person, and where is the projection template of that trait in the other person? I hope I'm being clear about this. I know it's a little bit advanced, but yes, you have a conflict. You have something is going on in the field. One person wants to criticize the other person. That criticism is only 50% or less correct, and the rest of it is covered with projection, covered with fantasy. And so it's brought up with the other person. The other person feels attacked, but then they have to realize that if they feel attacked, well, there must be something there. Because if there's nothing there, well, it probably wouldn't even show up if there was nothing there. But so they're going to feel like, okay, well, you're criticizing me, you're attacking me, and then they're going to have to they're going to have to recognize their own reactivity, and then they're going to have to recognize, oh, okay, well, he or she must be partially right. So the criticizer is partially wrong, and the criticized is how do we say this? The criticizer's criticism is partially mythology and partially true, and it doesn't matter how much. And then the other person has to figure out what it is for them. And so both people have to analyze it, and it's something that came up in the field. And so this means that so what this means is that I'm trying to stay focused here on this because it's very nuanced. This is in the field. When somebody brings up something that starts a conflict, it's in the field. It's in both people. It's in both people. Let me take another note for myself here. It's in both people. it's not just in the criticizer, it's not just in the attacker, it's not just in the aggressor. What's in the field is in both people. It's a relational complex. It's a relational pain body, right? And so there's a part of the complex that's in one person, there's a part in the other. You've got the aggressor in one side, and you got the victim in the other. The victim and the victor and the victim. You got both sides, and they can flip. One person can be the victor and attack the victim, and then they can turn it around and attack the other person. They can do it right then and there, or they can do it passively or actively, after the fact or whatever. But so you have this active passive, victim perpetrator field going on or dynamic going on, and it's in both people. If there's reactivity, if there's energy, if there's a conflict, if it's going, and it's not about so much what is being talked about on the surface, it's about old stuff where there was old wounds. There was old wounds, there was old stuff from childhood, there's old stuff that's inherited. And so now the conflict then becomes the doorway into further analysis and into deeper shadow work. And it also brings you into having to emotionally process the reactivity. So let me see where I am in my notes, and then we'll I'll go into more detail on that. So I've kind of skipped over some stuff, but I'm going to stay where we are. So where we are is working with the relational pain body. Conflict as prima materia. Awareness of the relational pain body and the inner family of parts that have their own perspectives. Speaking to parts, not persons. Right, so at first, Melissa and I, we were using the pain body analogy from Eckhart Tolle to understand the psychic parasite, you could say, that is involved in relational conflicts, and it's in both people. And we're basically seeing it in that system as like a single entity that is addicted to conflict. It's addicted to the chemicals of rage and desperation and fear and all of the relational shadow material. And so it constantly cycles in relationships and sucks you into it so it can feed. That's the Eckhart Tolle understanding. But in the internal family systems understanding, it's not just a single part, it's multiple parts. And this is more accurate. So these parts require us getting to know them and naming them and knowing what their attitudes are and what their feelings are. There's a movie it's a Pixar movie, so it's a cartoon, and it's called Inside Out. Inside Out. You should watch that. It's somewhat based on, to a great degree probably, based on internal family systems. You don't even really need to see the whole movie. You can just see a part of it just to kind of understand what they're doing there. So it's like it shows there's a person going about their life, and then inside the person there's like a control center where there's 4 or 5 smaller little creatures sitting behind the control panel or whatever, arguing about how they should influence the person. Joe Blow or Cindy or whatever is up here, and then inside of him or her are these parts. And every time Cindy wants to do something, she wants to go out with a boy, or he wants to go out with a girl, or he wants to get a new job, or whatever it is, these parts are inside and they're arguing amongst themselves about what's going to happen. One part is like really afraid of anything new could be scary and dangerous. And she's always like, no, something might happen. We can't do that. And then the other part is always blowing his top. He's always angry all the time. And I don't remember what all the different parts were, but there was a handful of parts in the person, and they're pulling the strings. They're operating the control panel of the larger person's behavior. And that's kind of how we see it in internal family systems. That's what your complexes are doing, or parts of your complexes, however you want to put it. And so you got to get to know those parts. Melissa was very good at this. She had Playgirl, she had Running Girl, she had Mad Girl, she had Sad Girl, she had Mad Girl, Sad Girl, Running Girl. There was a number of others. There was like 3 others that we had. I have to go look again and see, or just think. And so whenever these parts would get active, whenever there would be a conflict, or whenever she would go through a cycle, go through an emotional cycle, those specific parts would start talking and acting and running her. I do the same thing. We all do the same thing. And once you have tracked down these parts and figure out what their names are and what their behavior is and what they want, then when you get into conflicts with people or difficult situations with your partner, you can say, well, Mad Girl's up. Mad Girl's up again. Sad Girl's getting involved. And, or Monkey Boy in my case. Monkey Boy. Monkey's angry. And so when you have conflicts, then you can start talking to the other person about their parts. Instead of saying, Melissa, you're bad. Melissa, you're out of control. It's, Melissa, Mad Girl's up. She didn't like what just happened. It's okay. Let's talk to her. Let's work with it. And so that deflects people's natural reactivity, right? People don't get as reactive and angry when you're talking about their parts instead of about them. Now, if they're not initiated into this work, and you just start, speaking to somebody about their parts, what are you talking about? They're not going to like that. But so it has to be for your partner or someone that's initiated into this understanding. And so you talk to the parts, not to the person. Or we used to say, don't talk to the pain body. In other words, don't talk to the most reactive part. The part that just wants to fight, don't talk to that part. Talk to another part that's more evolved. Like we have adult Melissa. Try to talk to adult Melissa, not to Mad Girl. And in IFS, they have their protocols, and they have their 8 C's and all of this, and calm and compassion and curiosity and connectedness and whatever the 8 C's are. And so you're using the 8 C's to try to bring things into back to mutualism. But this is an important part. However you work it out, whether you just use the pain body understanding or whether you use IFS, however you end up doing that and working it out with your partner, you understand that there's a multitude of parts that are going on that are engaged in these conflicts or engaged in these mood swings, and that it's your job to work with them. That's your family now. Your partner comes into the relationship with a family. It's like they have multiple children and you brought in multiple children. It's like that show from the 70s, the Brady Bunch or whatever. They got married and they both had 3 children from prior marriages. So you had this big old family and you had all these dynamics. That's how we are. We come into a relationship with all these inner parts. And so now it's our role partially to figure out who those parts are and what their needs are, and learn to talk to those parts and to have a relationship with the whole family, not just the other person. So, developing the ability to listen to many parts talking in the other and not need to, my notes are messed up. Allowing them to saying their piece without shutting them down or running away from them. Right. Okay. Once you realize that especially when a complex is active, when you're having a conflict or there's something powerful is happening in the relationship, you will be able to hear different parts talking. You can hear a person talk in one way and say one thing or another, and then as the fight or the conversation goes on, another voice will come in. It's still your partner's normal voice, but another perspective will come in. That's another part. And then another one might come in. You can have a conflict with somebody and have maybe 3 or 4 parts even get active at different times. You can have a whole big cycle and the whole thing can cycle through, and it'll be this part started it, and then this part comes in, and then this part, and then this part, or back and forth, and then so and once you develop the ability to be able to hear the perspectives of all these different parts, then you're like, okay, I just need to let these parts say their piece. Once you realize that you're working with a whole family of parts that all have their own partial truths, or let's say they have their own subjective truths, and they're childlike, and they need to be able to say their piece, and you don't need to defend your position with the other person. Just because they're saying something that you don't agree with doesn't mean you have to hit back and stay on top and try to win, because there's a child part that's talking and this is just their belief. Let them have their belief. Let the child part have its belief, and then just let it, and then listen to it. Let it have its belief, listen to it, talk to it in its language, and then let it cycle on out. So this is how we're handling conflicts in these alchemical relationships. You see what I'm saying? So you have to get there. You have to get there. You have to read about IFS. You have to read about Eckhart Tolle's pain body. You have to work with this. You have to work with your partner on this. You have to start naming your parts. You have to start recognizing, oh, that's this part of me, and then that's another part of me. And you have to start cataloging your parts. So you have to, there's work that you have to do just to get up to speed on this, not that much. And then you use that as your conflict negotiation practice. So that's very, very powerful, and 99.99999% of the public is not doing that. They're just going back and forth, head to head with each other, beating each other up, and nothing is changing and nothing is evolving and nobody's healing, and it's just wearing you out. Whereas when you're doing this, you have a conflict, but by the time you've worked through the conflict, within a day or two, the whole thing is repaired, and you know a lot more about the other person. They know a lot more about you and your different parts, and you've not only repaired, but you've actually evolved. A conflict actually ends up evolving the relationship, whereas in the standard relationship, the conflict devolves the relationship, or it just keeps it the same. So this is we're doing alchemy. We're not doing what the average person is doing, which is just nothing. Developing the ability to emotionally process in each other's presence and alone. So we are... Okay, so we have to go back to John Ruskin's emotional clearing practice. That's his book, Emotional Clearing. You can get the shorter version of it that was changed a little bit by me and Melissa in any of my books. And so it's called emotional processing in our books. And so basically, instead of doing it in meditation, we're just doing it in conflict or in life. And so whenever you are emotionally activated, whenever you're triggered or charged and you're emotionally activated, the moment that you can, you go sit with it and you process the emotions and you allow the emotions to completely move through your body. And you can go in either of my books and you can read the chapters or the segments on emotional processing, and it's all fully explained there. And so we're processing our emotional energy in place. We're finding the proper physiological emotional channels for it, and we're moving that energy instead of distracting with drugs or alcohol or exercise or video games or whatever, or just fighting until we burn out. We're actually going, okay, I'm triggered, you're triggered, what's going on, who's involved, what parts are active, try to pull away, go emotionally process, go sit down, emotionally process, allow the emotions to fully move through you, and then come back either that night or the next day and say, okay, what happened? What parts were active? What was going on there? And then you can start pulling up shadow stuff and putting it on the table and talking about what happened, and then you're back to intimacy there, back to deepening your intimacy through this. So trust develops, intimacy develops, because you're doing this remedy. You're actually healing instead of just walking away, running away. And a lot of people cannot do this. They're just not capable. Most people probably. A lot of people can do this though, especially now. A lot more people can do this than ever could. So there's probably millions of people that can do this, but there's many more millions of people who just will never do it. They'll never try it. They won't find out about it, or they just can't do it. So they either just stay with their reactivity, or they just walk away, and they just will not confront these deeper levels of reality. So, so developing the ability to emotionally process in each other's presence. So sometimes you can just go sit down with the other person right there. Two people sit on the couch and cry through it, or express their rage, and just. But a lot of times it's alone. Kind of separate and do it yourselves, and then come back and process together. Either way, however you want to do it, but you emotionally process. As soon as you realize you're being reactive, okay, the complex has been triggered, parts have been triggered, blah blah blah, let's figure it out. Let's process, and then you come back and you figure it out. Never leave anything unresolved. Every fight should not only fully repair totally, but enhance the relationship afterwards. Right, so I said that. Inner work as the center of the relationship. Yeah, inner work as the center of the relationship. Studying and discovering the inner world together. Mapping it and problem solving together. Right? If you're studying Jungian psychology or IFS, you're doing it together. Where are you in that book? Or let's read that book together. Let me read to you tonight. You can read to me tomorrow. Whatever it is. Going through the book or watching videos and doing it together. Studying your particular mode of inner work, Jungian recommended. Yeah, I think everybody who's on this path should be pulling in Jungian psychology the Jungian way. It's not even just psychology. It's our psychospiritual practice. It's our psychospiritual modality, our way with a capital W. Making life art together. Recognizing you're living in a movie and making your own movie of awakening. What else do I have in here? You can do this in your own way. Melissa and I had this phrase, living in the movie. We used to say life is like a movie. And in our movie, we're making a movie about directing the movie of life. And that's kind of what I ended up doing when I made the movie about Melissa. We knew we were going to make an actual movie, but we didn't know it was going to be that way it turned out. But if you will realize that your life is a movie, that there's a script that came with you, you and your partner, or just you came with a script, and you can improvise within that script. There's plenty of improvisation that's possible, but the basic script is what it is. And so that's your screenplay, right? That's your screenplay. And instead of being just sitting in the chair just watching the movie of your own life happen to you, get up, realize, wow, this is a projection. This is a movie. Go up into the projector room, start looking around and figuring out what this is. Wow, there's the projector, there's the beam of light, there's the prism, there's the film with everything on the film. Here's a bunch of other movies that are running. Break it apart and become a director. Figure out how movies work. That's basically becoming a psychospiritual alchemist. Is figuring out how the movie is projected, and then getting above the level of the movie goer into the level of the director. The director can see the movie playing, but the director also can see, the director can also see how it was put together. So we're getting above the level of just the moviegoer into the director or co-director, because there's a big director, big D director, and you can't usurp that. But so you got your own movie. This is your movie. Realize it. Wake up to it. It's a movie. Now, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to craft your movie? How are you going to make beautiful art, life art, Melissa called it, with your movie of life? What are you going to do? If you approach your whole life as an art piece, and you're an artist engaged in the creation of that art piece, of that movie, that play, that work of art, well then there's everything's great. Even if something totally ridiculous happens, it's part of your movie. And even if something completely dramatic and out of control, crazy, or even tragic happens, like what happened to me losing Melissa, it's still part of your movie. And you have to now, you have to be involved in that movie making process to whatever degree you can. So when you look at it that way, there's a lot of play, there's a lot of improvisation, there's a lot of creativity going on. And then you can also document what you're doing. You can document your own. In fact, this is almost like this is a category of reality TV that's never been done. People who are Melissa and I did it. I don't know of anybody else that's ever done this in the modern world. We did this. We recorded everything, audio, video, everything. We used our phones and audio recorders, and we recorded everything of well, of course we didn't catch everything, but let's say we recorded, a chunk, 10% or whatever. We got little pieces of all our different states of consciousness and ideas and philosophy and experiences and all of this that we went through. We got little pieces of it enough to where you can make a movie out of it. You can make a comic out of that now. You can make a fictional book. You can make an actual movie. You can make whatever kind of piece of art you want to. You can make a concept album. You can make any kind of art you want to out of what you've documented in your own alchemical process, whether by yourself or with your partner. And so you can turn your alchemy practice into a physical work of art that you can actually release into the world, or many pieces of art that you could put into the world. I've got many pieces of art, well, already out, and then more to come. So I'll be doing that the rest of my life. And this is a genre that's not been done before. And so you can do that. And then, right, I said document your process, journal, film, record, all of that. That's the other thing, yeah, documenting. I'm right now. I'm working on this shadow work workshop, and so there's a lot of stuff that I'll be sharing with you guys after the workshop or before, whatever, as I'm putting together like all the my own kind of all the different steps and stages the way Melissa and I did it. That's what it's all based on, how we did it. And so yeah, you're definitely keeping a journal, a dream journal and a normal journal. And you could be recording audio, but you're keeping track of things and all of that and journaling everything. It's part of your process and part of your documenting. So that's, I think what I've said tonight so far. It's now 9:15, so I basically talked for about an hour on relationship alchemy. And it kind of followed I'm glad that I kind of broke out of the notes, because there was a lot of things in there that I needed to say that weren't in the notes. So anyway, that will be good for now.